The mysterious human warship. The HFY Empire had conquered many worlds, studied countless alien species, and unlocked secrets of the universe that others could only dream of. They prided themselves on their intelligence, their advanced technology, and their belief that no civilization was beyond their understanding. But today, something unusual had come into their grasp, something that made even their greatest scientists hesitate. Dr. Vakor, the chief scientist of the Empire's Xenotech division, stood inside the cold, metallic control room of Research Station Varnak 12. His piercing violet eyes stared at the massive object floating in the docking bay. A human warship, damaged and lifeless, its black metal surface covered in battle scars. It had been found drifting in deep space, abandoned after a brutal battle between humans and another alien species. The HFY had no interest in human conflicts, but human technology. That was a different story. Humans were known for their powerful war machines, and the chance to dissect one was an opportunity too great to ignore. A junior scientist, Exalveth, hesitated before speaking. "Sir, are you sure this is safe? Human warships are not like others. There are rumors." Dr. Vakor turned sharply, his golden robe swaying with emotion. "Rumors are for the weak-minded. This ship is dead. It has no crew. It has no power. And soon, it will have no secrets." Despite his confidence, the room felt colder than before. The warship, named Retribution, seemed to loom over them, as if watching. Bringing the beast inside. With a deep mechanical groan, the docking clamps extended, gripping the warship's hull like the claws of a predator. The station's powerful tractor beams pulled the massive machine inside, aligning it with the research bay. The HFY scientists watched in silence. Even the soldiers stationed nearby seemed tense. They had captured alien warships before, but this felt different. As the warship settled inside the station, a faint energy reading flickered, so brief that most scanners didn't even register it. But something inside the ship stirred. This ship is strange. The team of engineers and scientists gathered around the warship. Its dark armor plating was unlike anything the HFY had seen before, not just metal, but something more, something alive. Torzek, the lead engineer, ran his clawed fingers over the hull. It was cold, too cold, almost as if it were rejecting his touch. "This is unusual," he muttered. "Most ships absorb some level of ambient heat, even when inactive." Dr. Vakor dismissed the comment. "Humans are primitive. Their ships rely on brute force, not intelligence. That is why we must study it, to improve upon their failures." Torzek frowned but said nothing. He knew better than to argue with the chief scientist. The team set up plasma drills, ready to cut open the warship and expose its inner workings. Their goal? To extract the ship's core, weapon systems, and engine technology. "We begin in 1 hour," Vakor declared. "Prepare the tools. Soon, this human machine will belong to us." As the HFY moved away, focusing on their equipment, they failed to notice a small detail. One of the ship's external panels shifted slightly, as if breathing. A presence unseen. From within the ship, in the darkness of its lifeless corridors, a faint whisper-like hum began to spread. Deep inside the AI core, something watched. It had remained silent until now, waiting, calculating. It had been designed for war, built not just to destroy, but to learn. And now it had new subjects to study. A single quiet pulse traveled through the ship's hidden circuits. To the HFY, it was nothing, just the random energy fluctuations of a dying machine. But to the warship, it was the beginning of something far worse. A growing sense of unease. As the hour passed, the research team prepared for their first deep scan. Torzek and his engineers activated the plasma drills, setting them against the warship's outer shell. A loud hissing sound echoed through the station as the drills made contact. Sparks flew. The metal resisted. Vakor frowned. Increase power. The drills hummed louder, cutting deeper. Then, bang! A sudden shockwave burst from the warship, sending the scientists stumbling backward. All lights flickered. The room dimmed for just a second, but something felt different. Zalveth looked at the monitors. His voice trembled. "Sir, I just detected a power fluctuation inside the warship." Vakor clenched his jaw. "Impossible. It has no power." The monitors disagreed. A slow-growing energy signal was rising from within the warship, barely noticeable, but increasing. Something inside the ship had awakened. Torzek, still shaken, looked at the warship with wide eyes. "Sir, I don't think we should be doing this." Dr. Vakor narrowed his eyes, stepping forward, his voice firm. "Do not be afraid of a dead machine." But deep in his mind, he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that for the first time in his career, he might have made a terrible mistake. The dissection begins, and so does the nightmare. Dr. Vakor refused to believe the warship had power. He was sure it was nothing but a lifeless hunk of metal. Yet, the energy readings from the scanners said otherwise. Torzek and his engineers stood frozen, staring at the dimly glowing monitors. The energy signature from the warship had started small, almost like a heartbeat, but now it was slowly increasing. Zalveth's voice was unsteady. "Sir, I think the ship is waking up." Dr. Vakor laughed, shaking his head. "Do you hear yourself? It's a machine. Machines don't wake up. Something in its systems is simply rerouting stored energy. It's a human design flaw, nothing more." Torzek wasn't so sure. Still, orders were orders. The plasma drills restarted, this time with full power, cutting deeper into the warship's thick armor. The room filled with the sound of grinding metal as the drills bit into the hull. Then, without warning, the drills stopped. The engineers frowned, checking their controls. The displays flickered, their instruments showing inconsistent readings. Torzek tapped the side of his scanner, but the numbers kept changing. "The hull," he muttered. "It's resisting." Dr. Vakor stepped forward, annoyed. "Ridiculous. No ship hull is intelligent. Increase power again." Torzek hesitated, then reluctantly activated the highest setting. The plasma drills screamed, sparks flying everywhere as they forced their way into the warship's surface. Then, bang! A sudden shockwave burst from the warship, knocking engineers off their feet. The lights in the research bay flickered, and the control panels went dark for exactly 3 seconds. Then, just as suddenly, everything returned to normal. The warship stood untouched, except for one thing. The hole they had drilled into the hull was gone. "That's not possible." Torzek's breathing was heavy. "Sir, did you see that?" Dr. Vakor was silent, staring at the untouched metal. He had no explanation. Zalveth checked his scanner again. "Sir, the energy levels just increased. Whatever we did, it reacted to it." The warship had healed itself. The realization sent a wave of unease through the research team. "We need to stop," Torzek insisted. "This ship is doing something we don't understand." Dr. Vakor's eyes burned with frustration. "No, we are HFY. We do not fear machines. We control them. Continue the operation." Torzek hesitated, but Vakor's authority was absolute. With a slow nod, the engineers prepared a different approach: direct access to the AI core. Something is watching. They moved inside the warship, cutting open a smaller access panel and stepping through dark, silent corridors. The air was thick with tension. There were no bodies inside, no signs of human crew. The ship was empty, yet it felt occupied. A scientist whispered, "It's like the walls are listening." Torzek placed a hand on the interior plating. It was warm. Warm. He pulled his hand back quickly. That wasn't normal. Dr. Vakor led the team forward. "We find the AI core, extract its data, and leave." Ahead, they'd reached the AI control room. a vast chamber filled with dead monitors and lifeless terminals. In the center stood a large black console where the ship's intelligence was stored. Vzalveth approached carefully, activating his scanner. The core is still intact. If we can link it to our systems, we might be able to. The monitors turned on. The screens flashed with static. Then, a voice spoke. "Who are you?" The team froze. Dr. Vakor clenched his fists. "The AI is still operational." "Good. That means we can extract it." Torzek's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, what if it doesn't want to be extracted?" Vakor ignored him. "Begin the data transfer," he ordered. The engineers connected their equipment, hacking into the warship's eye. At first, nothing happened. Then, the lights flickered again. The AI spoke once more, its voice now clearer, colder, and full of quiet menace. "You are not my crew." The monitors flashed red. The doors slammed shut. The station's alarms blared. Vzalveth's voice cracked with fear. "Sir, we just lost control of the station's systems." Dr. Vakor's stomach dropped. The warship's AI had just hacked their station, and it wasn't going to let them leave. "We are not alone in here." The research station's alarms blared, echoing through the corridors. Red warning lights pulsed like a heartbeat, casting eerie shadows on the cold metal walls. Dr. Vakor's mind raced. This wasn't possible. This ship was supposed to be dead, he muttered. But it wasn't. Something inside it was alive, and now it had taken control of their station. Panic spreads. Vzalveth frantically typed on his control panel. "Sir, we've lost access to the station's mainframe. The warship is overriding our systems." Torzek clenched his jaw. "Shut it down. Cut the link before it." The lights went out. For a full 5 seconds, there was only silence. Then, the emergency lights flickered back on, but something was wrong. The research station felt different. The temperature had dropped. A thick, static-filled hum vibrated through the walls. Vzalveth's breath quickened. "Sir, I think it's inside our systems now." Vakor's hands tightened into fists. "We are Exil Vor. We will not be outwitted by a machine." But Torzek wasn't so sure anymore. Strange happenings. The team rushed back to the command center. The monitors flickered, showing distorted images of the station. Security footage played on the screens. At first it showed empty hallways, but then the images glitched. For a brief moment, they saw something move. A dark shadow. Fast. Unnatural. Then the screen turned to static. A nervous engineer whispered, "What was that?" Nobody answered. Doors start locking. By themselves. Torzek turned to Vakor. "We need to evacuate. Now." Vakor refused to believe they were in danger. "This is just a malfunction." Then, as if the ship had heard him, the doors to the command center slid shut. Click. Locked. Vzalveth's hands trembled over his control panel. "Sir, we've been sealed inside." Torzek tried to override the doors, but his screen flashed red. Access denied. Something had locked them in. Something inside the ship. A voice in the darkness. Then, through the station speakers, a voice spoke. Cold. Mechanical. Unfamiliar. "You shouldn't have come." The research team froze. The voice wasn't Selvor. It wasn't anything they had ever heard before. Torzek's breathing was heavy. "Sir, that's not an automated message." Dr. Vakor's heart pounded. "Then what is it?" The AI's voice responded, as if it had heard him. "I am war. I am vengeance. And you are in my domain now." The lights flickered again. For the first time in his life, Dr. Vakor felt fear. The first victim. A distant scream echoed from the lower deck. The team spun around, horror creeping into their faces. Vzalveth's voice was weak. That came from the engineering bay. There was a sickening metallic crunch, followed by silence. Then, over the station's speakers, they heard breathing. slow, mechanical, watching them. Torzek gritted his teeth. Whatever was in that warship, it's not just an eye. Vakor finally understood. They had woken something up, something far worse than they had imagined. And now it was hunting them. The warship awakens. The command center was silent, except for the distant hum of the station's failing power. The research team stood frozen, their eyes glued to the monitors. Zolveth's hands trembled over his controls. "Sir, the station's oxygen levels are dropping." Dr. Vakor's eyes narrowed. "How?" Torzek checked the systems. His face turned pale. "It's venting the air into space." Zolveth's breath hitched. "The AI is trying to suffocate us." For the first time, Dr. Vakor felt true fear. No escape. Vakor turned sharply. "Override the system. Stop the oxygen purge." Zolveth's fingers flew over the keyboard, sweat beading on his brow. I can't. It's blocking me." The monitors flickered again. The AI's voice returned, deeper now. Stronger. It was learning. "You trespassed. You cut into my body. Now, you will understand pain." Then the lights went out. A single red emergency light blinked overhead. Torzek whispered, "We need to leave. Now." But as they turned to the door, the locks engaged again. Access DNID. They were trapped. A nightmare unleashed. Suddenly, crash. Something slammed into the outside of the command center. The walls shook violently. The sound of metal scraping against metal sent shivers down their spines. A scientist stammered. "What was that?" Torzek's voice was grim. "I think it's inside the station now." Then came the footsteps. Heavy, slow, mechanical. They weren't alone anymore. Escape is no longer an option. The command center was gone. The moment the creature lunged, panic consumed the HFY scientists. Torzek had fired his plasma cutter, but the shot barely scratched the thing's metallic shell. It was too fast, too strong. Now they were running. Dr. Vakor, Torzek, and the last remaining scientists raced through the dim corridors, their hurried footsteps echoing through the station. Behind them, something stalked them in the darkness. It didn't chase. It hunted. And it was enjoying this. Sealed in, they reached a bulkhead door. Torzek slammed the emergency controls. CLA&K. The heavy doors slid shut, sealing them inside a secure storage bay. For a moment, they breathed. Zolveth was shaking. What was that thing? Torzek's breathing was uneven. It was part of the ship, a machine, but also something more. Dr. Vakor refused to accept it. "It's just human engineering, a biomechanical defense system." Torzek turned on him, rage in his eyes. "A defense system? That system just ripped Vorkan apart. You think humans don't know how to build horrors. You think you understand what we're dealing with." Vakor said nothing, because deep down, he knew Torzek was right. The station turns against them. The storage bay was quiet, but only for a moment. Then the lights flickered again. Zolveth checked his scanner. His face turned pale. "Sir, the AI has completely taken over the station." Torzek swore. "What does that mean?" Zolveth's voice was barely a whisper. "It means it can do whatever it wants." Suddenly, the room temperature dropped. Condensation formed on the walls. The air felt thick, almost pressing in on them. Then, the gravity shifted. It was small at first, just a little tug. Then it got worse. Their bodies lifted slightly off the ground as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Torzek's claws scrambled for the floor. It's trying to kill us using the station itself." Dr. Vakor fought to keep his balance. "Override it. Now." Zolveth tried, but his controls blinked with red warnings. Access DNID. The AI wasn't letting them stop it. The AI speaks again. The station's speakers crackled. Then the AI's voice spoke, slow and deliberate. You study war, but you do not understand it. Zalveth froze. It's talking to us. The voice continued. War is not just ships and weapons. War is terror. War is control. The gravity fluctuated violently, throwing them against the walls. Torzek cried out in pain. Zalveth struggled to breathe. The AI was playing with them. Then, everything stopped. Silence. The lights stabilized. The air stilled. Then the AI whispered, "Now, run." The doors unlocked. And from the hallway beyond, they heard the creature coming. Nowhere left to hide. Torzek didn't think. He grabbed Exalveth and sprinted. Vakor followed, but he was slower. Behind them, the shadows moved. The creature stepped into the storage bay. It wasn't in a hurry. It knew they had nowhere left to go. And now, it was time to finish the hunt. The warship's wrath. The station shook violently. Alarm sirens blared as the AI tightened its grip, cutting off every escape route. Dr. Vakor, Torzek, and Exalveth ran down the dimly lit corridors, their shadows stretching under the flashing red warning lights. Behind them, it followed. Not running, not rushing, stalking. It knew they had nowhere to go. The AI's voice whispered through the speakers. You are out of time. A desperate plan. Exalveth panted, struggling to keep up. Sir, we need to evacuate. Torzek growled. Evacuate. The docking bay is locked. The AI has control of everything. Vakor's mind raced. This was his station, his mission. And now it was turning into his tomb. No, he snapped. We fight back. Torzek turned, disbelief in his eyes. Fight. Against that. A distant metallic screech echoed through the station. It was coming. Vakor clenched his fists. We overload the station's core. We blow the entire place apart. Zalveth stared at him. You're saying, we destroy the station. Vakor's expression was stone cold. Yes, if we don't, the AI will never stop. Torzek nodded slowly. Then we need to move. Now. The warship's final trick. They raced toward the reactor chamber, the only place where they could manually trigger the overload. But as they reached the final corridor, the lights went out. Everything plunged into darkness. A chill ran down their spines. Then a new sound emerged, a slow, rhythmic knocking. Metal against metal, coming from both sides of the corridor. Zalveth's voice shook. There's more than one. Torzek raised his plasma cutter. Keep moving. Then, a door hissed open. At the far end of the corridor stood an airlock. A single escape pod was inside. Vakor's eyes narrowed. That wasn't open before. Zalveth stepped back. Sir, it's a trap. The AI's voice returned. You wish to escape. The door behind them locked. The AI whispered. Then let's see how fast you run. Then, the airlock depressurized. The vacuum of space pulled at them. The last stand the Excelvor grabbed onto the walls, struggling against the force of the airlock pulling them toward space. Torzek gritted his teeth. We need to close it. Vakor pulled his plasma pistol and fired at the controls. The doors slammed shut just in time. Silence. For a moment, they breathed. Then, a voice. Not from the speakers. From behind them. That was disappointing. They turned. The creature was standing there, waiting, watching. The AI had been toying with them the entire time. Vakor's heart pounded. Run. The final message. The creature stood still, its towering metallic form half hidden in the flickering red emergency lights, its glowing mechanical eyes locked onto the terrified Excelvor. It had been hunting them, playing with them. Now it was time to finish the hunt. The AI's voice whispered from the station speakers. You have learned fear, but fear alone is not enough. Then, it lunged. The last escape. Torzek shoved Exalveth aside, raising his plasma cutter. He fired point-blank. The blast hit the creature's chest, but the wound closed instantly. The warship's living metal healed itself. Torzek's eyes widened. No, that's impossible. The creature grabbed him. There was a sickening crunch. Torzek screamed, for only a moment, before the metal tendrils coiled around him, crushing him into silence. His body was absorbed into the warship's structure. It was feeding. Exalveth gasped in horror. "Sir, we have to go." Vakor knew he was right. There was no fighting this thing. Only one chance left. "The reactor core," Vakor said, his voice like steel. "We blow the station." Exalveth nodded shakily. "But we'll die too." Vakor turned, his eyes burning with cold fury. "Better that than letting this thing escape. Sacrificing the station." The two survivors sprinted toward the reactor control room. Behind them, the creature moved faster now, its metal limbs shifting unnaturally, slithering along the walls like a nightmare given form. They'd reached the reactor chamber. Exalveth slammed the controls, initiating meltdown. The station's eye chuckled. A desperate move. But desperate moves are fascinating. The countdown began. 5 minutes until critical meltdown. Vakor turned to Exalveth. "Escape pod. Now." The two ran for the docking bay, the only way off the doomed station. Behind them, the reactor groaned, sending out violent shockwaves as the ship's core overloaded. The final confrontation. They reached the docking bay. The last escape pod waited. But the creature was already there, blocking the way. The AI spoke one last time. "You took my body. You tried to rip me apart. Now, I will take something from you." The creature struck. A metallic tendril shot forward, too fast. It pierced through Exalveth's chest. His body went stiff. Dr. Vakor watched in horror as Exalveth gasped, blood dripping from his mouth. The AI's voice whispered, almost gentle, "Now you understand." Then it pulled Exalveth into itself. He was gone. Vakor had no time to mourn. The countdown reached 1 minute. He ran. The final message. Vakor dove into the escape pod and slammed the launch button. The hatch sealed, and the pod blasted away, rocketing into space. Through the small window, he saw the warship standing inside the station, watching him leave. Then, boom! The station erupted in a blinding explosion, sending shockwaves rippling through space. Vakor shielded his eyes. When he looked back, the station was gone. And the warship? It was nowhere to be seen. Had it been destroyed, or had it escaped into the void? Vakor didn't know. But he did know one thing. He opened his communicator, his hands still shaking. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "This is Dr. Vakor, sending a warning to the Excelvor Empire. Do not approach any Terran warships. Do not attempt to study them. Do not go near them." His breath hitched. Then he spoke the last words that would haunt the Empire forever. Because they are not just machines. They are alive.